Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Cryptic Conversations. I'm your host, Tunes from the Crypt, and we have another very special guest in store today. Today's guest is a woman named Margo, also known as the Microdose Mentor. Margo's story is a remarkable one, as she has transformed personal adversity into a powerful mission of healing and growth. Margo has dedicated herself to helping others turn their PTSD into PTG, post-traumatic growth. Margo's own journey is an extraordinary testament to resilience and the indomitable human spirit. At the tender age of 8, she experienced a life-altering tragedy. However, Margo's unyielding determination and strength enabled her to rise above the circumstances and pave a new path. Margo shares her story of personal triumph, offering a beacon of hope for those who have faced trauma and adversity. Margo's profound insights and compassionate guidance have touched the lives of many as she helps them navigate their transformative journeys. Get ready to be inspired as we embark on a conversation that explores the transformative power of turning trauma into triumph. Welcome, Margo.
Thank you so much for that amazing intro. Wow, that was inspiring me.
Yeah, no worries. I'm glad to have you here. I put a post in it was that one spirituality seeking podcast guest group, and you commented and you shared your story, and immediately I felt connected and drawn to you, and I was like, yeah, I gotta have you on, and so excited to chat with you today.
Thank you so much. And yeah, spirituality has been something that's been near and dear to my heart. I've felt really connected to nature, to the universe ever since I was a young kid.
Yeah.
And honestly, I've seen things manifest because of my thoughts that then I put to words and then actions. And that's the whole story behind this story too.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it. Okay, so we could dive right into it. So talk to me about your early life. Where did you grow up and where'd you go to school?
Yeah, I grew up in Aurora, Illinois, which is a suburb outside of Chicago, about 45 minutes on a good day with no traffic. And my elementary years, about in fourth grade, I was at home sleeping in the middle of the night. I started hearing my mom screaming out my name. In shock, I ran downstairs to find my mom completely bloody and just needing to call someone to provide some emergency care, right? So my dad actually told me to call 911. And it was almost like he woke up out of a trance. It was very interesting. So, he gets taken off to prison. He was our breadwinner for the household. So we ended up being homeless. And that lasted for about 4 or 5 years until we were lucky enough to win the lottery ticket for Section 8. And that took a totally different trajectory in my life, where you don't experience this in everyday common life, the things that you experience when you're on welfare.
Nah.
And the treatment, honestly, is the worst part of it, is that you keep trying to come up and muster up the strength and confidence and courage to do the things that you see that you need to do, but people can actually bring you down. And that's the hardest part, I think, for anyone.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story. I'm sure that was it's a very difficult moment of your life. So you said your mom's face was bloody. So yeah. So what happened? Do you know why? And do you know why it happened?
Yeah, definitely. So my dad took a gun to her. And then after I had come down, the only thing I saw was a knife to her throat that she was holding with 2 fingers. What had happened is that he had a mental break. After his death in 2009, I actually became really depressed, like instantly after his death. And it almost felt like all of his sadness, all of his anger, all that energy was being passed down to me. And now I understood a different perspective. So I started becoming curious about his life. Prior to this, I was mad at him naturally. I just thought he ruined my life. But what unfolded was the fact that he had actually been traumatized multiple times in his life, from his family not treating him right. They treated him like garbage. So there was no trust, no love there. He didn't know how to build that trust and love with other people, even though my mom was there supporting him. he thought that he actually was not in good, safe place, right? So he showed a lot of signs. People were not seeing it because in my culture, I'm Eastern European, Czech and Slovakian, and we tend to drink to any event that we go to at any day. And that's how we kind of forget our problems. They just get washed away. And eventually you forget them because your memories go away.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's such a difficult story, man. I want to send you my love, and I'm sorry that that's something that you went through, but I can see that you are turning it into, like we mentioned earlier, trauma into triumph. You're overcoming it, and you're learning to let go of it, and so
Yeah.
I want to congratulate you on that. And
I'm very thankful for this hardship that I had. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, you probably would have asked me and I wouldn't be saying the same thing.
yeah,
But right now, I look back and understand that I was actually gifted a new perspective.
wow,
Some challenges that were placed in my field or my pathway that I had to overcome. Lots of people now come to me and they're like, how do you know this stuff? And I was like, well, I had a different lifestyle than you. I had this already in my pathway. So I've learned all the steps to get to where I need to go with this. So now I share that with others too.
that's beautiful. Okay, so can you tell us about your background and how you became involved in the field of microdosing?
Yeah, my origins came from actually being in politics, and that's not a fun topic to talk about. But my desire was to become an attorney because of what had happened in my past. I thought that I could actually put some justice out in the world, in the courts. And thankfully, one of my professors just told me that there's going to be a large influx of attorneys going into the bar schools, and it's going to be challenging for myself to make a name. So it's like the universe put something in my path, because the next day after I graduated, a local county campaign for a state senator was looking for more people to be involved. And I never thought that I'd be in state politics ever, but I went, and it taught me a lot about my work ethic, because you work like a dog in politics.
Uh-huh.
But to keep me sane during that time, I had a hobby alongside of it where I was making infused gummies with alcohol, calling it the Party Favor Candy Company. And it was going really well. I was selling out on Etsy. But it came to a time that after I talked to my mentors, they're like, we don't see that this is going to be able to be scalable for you and what you're trying to do. So I had to step back. And luckily at the same time, I was talking to the state senator. Every time I had his ear, I'd bring up the benefits of plant medicine. So when the cannabis industry unfolded in 2017, he just saw a perfect pairing and suggested, you have these gummy recipes and you're in cannabis, why not apply yourself? So I was the 50th employee at Cresco Labs, one of the nationwide's biggest cannabis companies right now.
Okay.
Sunnyside Dispensary, that's them. And yeah, basically it started off the ball rolling for me. I went to conferences and expos, and now I'm the executive director for Illinois NORML, which is the National Organization for Reform Marijuana Law, where we advocate for cannabis consumers to get educated, and also as a cannabis consumer protection agency.
Nice. Yeah, for some reason, whenever I think of the word microdose, I automatically start thinking about mushrooms. But I guess, yeah, when you microdose could be marijuana as well, and other substances, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That is the goal, honestly, because we shouldn't be looking to getting high from cannabis. I know that is the mainstream right now, but my goal is to actually provide that personalized care where people and individuals can handle their everyday lives, tend to their kids, and be with their partners, go to work while that medicine is working in the background for them. So that is my starting point for anyone. And then the next step, if they're still having troubles of breaking free and healing through whatever it is that they're going through, I suggest psilocybin mushrooms.
Okay, nice. So I saw it on your Facebook page too that you have recently been acknowledged and ordained as a minister. Can you talk more about that?
Oh, yes. The Sanctuary Church in Kentucky. I discovered them earlier this year in actually December, January. And it was a viral video that went around about the Amanita mushrooms that are the red and white dotted ones, like this one.
Yeah.
And it was about the origins of the story having relations to the Christmas story, basically. And I was like, what is this all about? Had to do some digging around research and found that they offer free Sunday services for anyone to attend this mushroom church. You just sign up on their newsletter to get notified of the next week's one. And when you join in, it's 30 minutes of service that's recorded, and then they shut the recording down after. And then we reflect on the readings that we had from the service, which we read from the Tao Te Ching, which is a Buddhist book. And then also there's a rotational book like The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle that we reflect on. And we integrate how the mushrooms work in our current lifestyles, and people can pick up from different stories. So you don't have to be on camera at all if you don't feel comfortable, but it's a great tool. It's a great way to learn from others. Psilocybin mushrooms have been utilized out in nature for centuries and in ancient civilizations.
Yeah.
And that is the proper way to be able to utilize them too. So by becoming an ordained minister through the sanctuary church, I will then be able to provide through the mushrooms and be able to skirt away from the law coming after us, because it's under the Religious Freedom Act, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, RFRA, that protects us.
Is that does that protect you at the federal level or only at the state level?
So that is at the state level, because each state jurisdictions are different. So federally, they can still say something, but the beautiful thing about Sanctuary Church is that they have a large community, they have a number of attorneys, and they, in their contracts that they have everywhere, they say that if anything happens to you, they'll come to the court and provide representation for you too.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's like I went to an ayahuasca retreat about a month ago now, and yeah, they're a nonprofit and they're a church. You know, I'm sure it's a similar thing. So how would you define microdosing, and what are some common misconceptions about it that you often come across?
Sure. Microdosing is just taking a very small amount of the substance, like a psychedelic, of mushrooms or LSD, even cannabis. And the purpose of it is so that you don't feel that high effect. You don't feel anything different, but you feel a sense of confidence. Colors are a little bit more crisp, and you just feel just a sense of wonder and curiosity and focus all at the same time. But it's all just subtle. You don't feel it bam in your face. That will come if you take a mild or a macro dose. And common misconceptions about microdosing is the fact that you will feel some kind of psychedelic effect from the microdose. And the levels are so minimal, you always want to start at the lowest amount. So 0.01. Then you build off on that 0.015, then 0.02, and go up to those increments until you feel that psychedelic threshold. Once you start feeling, oh, something's a little different now, tone it down then. That's your psychedelic threshold.
So those numbers that you just gave, is that across the board, or were you speaking on a specific substance?
So that's microdosing psilocybin mushrooms.
Okay.
That's a generalized guideline. Everyone is going to be different and unique. Some of us have higher tolerances than others. So it's always wise to go on a journey with someone that's well-equipped, an expert in the field, so that they can provide that understanding and comfort when you have the uncomfortableness come up, if ever.
Okay. So what are some of the reported benefits that people have experienced from microdosing?
Microdosing has provided treatment for anxiety, for depression, for PTSD, and those are the mental health ones. But there's also people that are treating it themselves to steer away from addictions. And it doesn't mean just alcohol addictions or drug addictions. People tend to have addictions to smoking cigarettes or watching TV a lot, too much time on social media, eating too much, or drinking is an alcoholic. So yeah, so all of these are different forms of addictions that we all harness. And if utilized with intention, the microdoses, you can start subduing yourself away from those addictions. So that is a really cool feature about being able to utilize microdoses.
Okay. What about, could you share some insights into the science behind microdosing and how it exactly like affects the brain and consciousness?
Definitely. The microdoses will activate every single part of your brain. Meaning, you've probably heard that in any part of your day, you're utilizing about 10% of your brain. And those 10% will jump around to different areas of your head or your mind while you are, doing cleaning, or if you're cooking something, it's all going to be in different parts of your brain.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you're microdosing or even mild and macrodosing, this activates all the circuits in your brain to be able to communicate, even if they've been dormant for a long time. So if they've been dormant from a long time, that means that there's a memory that needs to be unlocked. And it tends to be a memory that we've decided to ignore, that it was a little bit too much for us to handle. So we never got the ability to process those emotions. And what the microdoses do is they allow you to be able to observe what happened, but not absorb the feelings. So you can dissect and you can analyze and you can figure out new solutions to whatever issue it was. And you can step back and be like, all right, I know what I need to do, and this isn't going to affect me or put me down. I'm going to get to it.
Perfect. Well said. So what about, what are some safety considerations that individuals should keep in mind when considering microdosing?
The safety, I would say, would be, if you're taking any medications, please consult with a doctor and an expert in the psychedelic field. I'll be happy to help you as the Microdose Mentor. I will be your advocate. Also, if you have bipolar 1 and 2, and schizophrenia, there's a bit of a different protocol suggested. All the experts out there are telling you that if you have either of those conditions, that you can't utilize psilocybin mushrooms. But in fact, we don't fully understand mental health, and we don't fully even understand prescriptions and what they can do to our mental health and overall health. So it's still a good medicine to be able to lean into if you have those conditions. But I just advise you to work with someone that is an expert in the field so that they can guide you properly, so that you're in safe hands.
Yeah. Well, what comes to my mind is, you hear it a lot, is the setting. And, I think, it's a very important part of it is, your mindset going into the experience, your intention, and then the setting as well. You want to make sure you're in a comfortable setting and all that. And, I remember the first time I did mushrooms, I was 16. I was in high school. I was in high school, and we were kids, and we were doing it for the thrill. We had the wrong intentions, and the one friend of mine, he did a big dose, and interesting too. I remember in high school, like, this guy was like a big tough football player, and I looked up to him. He was this tough guy, and he would get in fights, and I always looked up to him, and he would bully me, every now and then, like nothing crazy, like um but that day I realized, like, he was physically strong, but mentally he was mentally weak, and he wasn't ready for that experience, and he had kind of a bad experience. But we helped guide him out of it, and yeah.
That is the most important part, is the most vital part, is to have that support through your community.
Yeah.
So it's always better to go in a group setting rather than a single setting, because it will connect you with all the people that you're around with. And then you feel that you are loved and cared for by this supportive group. But I'm happy that you guys were there to support your friend, because I've also heard of people taking large doses and just not having the proper way to process what happened. And it can change you over time. Right? So when we're younger, we don't have as much responsibilities, or we don't have as many memories or traumas, technically, that can affect us. But when we take these large doses, they pull back the veil of our lives that we've been hiding, and sometimes bring up repressed memories that we completely forgot about. And if we don't have the support there to, guide us through those challenging times, it could feel a little lonely.
Yeah. Okay. So are there specific substances commonly used in microdosing, and what factors might influence the choice of substances? I know you mentioned psilocybin, LSD, cannabis. Are those the main three? Are there any others?
So MAPS is the organization that's helping psilocybin mushrooms come up to get federal changes. So we'll see the federal changes happening in the next 3 to 5 years, which is really
Yep.
cool.
Yep.
And alongside the psilocybin mushrooms, they're also fighting for MDMA.
Mhm.
So those are two that are going to be changing in the next few years that'll be offered in clinical settings,
Uh-huh.
but there needs to also be some advantages to provide to work in nature. Or I challenge therapists to take their therapy sessions out in nature.
Oh yeah. 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 I saw something on your Instagram too. I think it was your Instagram where you did a video and you were saying like, can we normalize meditating before meetings? And it was like, yeah, like simple things like that. Like we can and start incorporating spirituality and these spiritual practices in our work and like you said, in therapy. To me, it's common sense. Like why aren't we doing these things, you know?
Absolutely. I'm reflecting on a couple of days ago where I had a pretty challenging conversation with someone, and then I jumped on another call and I still felt that energy in me.
Oh yeah.
And unfortunately, I was a little bit more harsh to this gentle soul that didn't
Mm,
deserve that. So, had I taken that moment to ground myself ahead of the second meeting, I would have been a little bit more level headed. But luckily, everything worked out, no big deal. It wasn't as, crazy as I'm making it sound, but it's really beneficial for us to be able to find the time, just even if it's a minute or two, to bring yourself back to the true you and not letting someone else's energy affect the rest of your day.
yeah. So what guidance or protocols do you typically provide to individuals who are new to microdosing?
So the protocol is always going to be start low and go slow with any, whether it's cannabis or mushrooms or LSD, MDMA, any of the things, ketamine, all the things that exist out there, right? They're going to start you off slowly till they build you up to a tolerance or to figure out what that threshold is for you. And then if you're still interested in going beyond that threshold, there's different protocols and guidelines that they'll follow through with that too.
Nice. Okay. Can you share any success stories from individuals who have participated in your Microdose Mentor program?
Yeah, I have a current client that I'm working with that is actually from Middle East culture. And for him, it's been a challenge to actually communicate because in his culture, the men tend to not show emotion. They
Mm,
don't show their feelings. They're reserved. They don't speak a lot. And that's what he came to me for. He said that he wants to reconnect with his spirituality too. And the first time he went into it, which was about 2 weeks ago, he actually took the 7 gram dose and didn't feel anything. And that's because he was so excited and anticipating the effects that the ego could not let go. So it didn't take effect. And that is very common. So you
wow.
have to find yourself to be able to be in a meditative state, to not think about anything happening or coming up, that you're just letting go. And that's when it comes in. Right. So then the second time we just went on a Wednesday trip and it took effect. And it was the most beautiful thing to see. I was worried in the beginning that it wasn't going to take effect. And I looked over to him and asked, "How are you feeling?" And he turned to me and gave me the biggest smile. And he said, "I'm communicating with nature." And I knew that it was already started. So afterwards, he actually had challenges telling me, describing to me what had happened. And that's where the integration comes in. So on the last hug that I gave to him before he went home, I held him tightly and said, next time I talk to you, I want to hear about your experiences. So sometimes for someone like myself, I also had social anxiety. It's a lot easier to write it down than to
Mm,
say it, especially if there's a language barrier.
oh yeah.
Then the next day I called him And he was just rambling and rambling and rambling about all these details and the deities that he saw and the spirit guide that he felt and this window in a tree that was speaking to him, and like memories were coming up and connections were being made. And that is the goal, is to be able to open up the mind to see what is causing this, how can I be better at this, and how can I move forward to be the best representation of myself. So I'm very proud of that success story, but there's a number of them that I could go on and on about.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah, I love hearing that story. So what role does mindset and intention play in maximizing the benefits of microdosing?
Mindset is the most important thing. When you go into one of these trip experiences and you've had maybe a couple of bad days ahead of it, but you still feel like you're in the right mindset when you're going into the trip experience, those couple of bad days could come back into the experience and take you on a path that you probably don't want to go on.
Mm-hmm.
So taking the few days ahead of time, kind of clearing your space, clearing your mind, staying off of social media is vital. We've had experiences with clients where people will be really genuinely open-minded and good-hearted. We've known them for a number of years, and then they go on a deep experience and things from the news come out. I've heard stories of people just undressing, running around, screaming profanities at other people. And it can be a little weird, but it's not that individual. It's actually the subconscious and what it's been picking up that's expressing itself through the energy. And when that individual woke up from the experience, he's like, why am I naked? And it was like, that is just the beginning of your story right now. The full story behind this.
Yeah. Okay. So how do you approach the integration of microdosing into a person's overall wellness routine?
There's a few ways that I do it. So for anyone that doesn't have the ability to afford someone, the sanctuary service calls on Sundays are a great way for you to be able to integrate and learn from other people's stories and how they're integrating it too. But the way that I approach it is that, when you have your experience, I ask questions to deepen the thought into what that experience brought to you. So you start telling me, oh, this is happening, or I saw this, or I'm feeling this. And I start asking you how and what questions, so that people are then being kind of opened up more and more, and the neurons in your brain are broadening those connections to other neurons. So it's just a way, it's unique to each one. I can't give you like a specific thing that I say, but I just try to keep probing for more questions to be, brought into different possibilities.
Okay. What about, are there any potential risks that people should be aware of or before starting a microdosing practice?
Microdosing is completely safe. Going into a mild or macrodose, I would, suggest to have someone that's kind of familiar with these experiences with you, that you trust, just so that you can get your bearings. And then once you get your bearings, I trust that you can do this on your own. However, the dangers that I would necessarily see, at a higher heroic dose or a breakthrough dose, which is like a 5 gram to 7 gram, I would highly recommend to have someone there alongside of you, because
Yeah.
it takes you in a completely different world. You may not be able to really realize what you're doing, because it is, takes you into a different realm, basically. And you could, walk across a busy street, or if you have a fire, you could, accidentally walk through the fire. So it's good to have someone there to guide you there.
Yeah, I think I've done mushrooms a handful of times, and I think the largest I think I've never gone past like 2 grams, and that was I could feel it with that, so I could imagine a 5 or even higher than that. That'd be pretty intense for me.
2 gram dose is about like a creative dose. So that's where you can have creative breakthroughs come in.
Uh-huh.
But I want to say, sidebar, mushrooms are one of the most safest things out there. They're safer than eating your potatoes. Potatoes, if you eat too many of them, they'll have arsenic and could harm you or kill you.
Uh-huh.
So just keep that in mind.
And so, where do mushrooms grow? Is it true that they grow in cow feces? Sometimes they do, right?
In nature, yes, they
Yeah.
do. They also grow on wood and bark falling
Yeah.
over trees. But when you're growing it at home, you don't have to use compost like that. You can grow it on brown rice substrates
That's right.
and
Okay.
others, like other rices too, and other materials. I've even seen it on toilet paper rolls.
Okay. Uh, how does microdosing relate to other wellness practices such as meditation, mindfulness, or therapy?
Yeah, so mindfulness, meditation, or therapy is a means to bring yourself into a calmer energy so that you can tap into your truest desires, your true self. However, some of us may have a little bit more stress, a little bit more traumatic events that happen. So it's a challenge for us to be able to tap in and tune in. So that's where plant medicines allow us to break free from that and completely just let go and go through it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy when you think about it. If you look back in time, 10, 15 years ago, if you remember where cannabis was, 10, 15 years ago, I feel like psychedelics or mushrooms specifically are entering that phase now where it's really going to be, would you say in 3 to 5 years, it's potentially going to be legal at the federal level?
Yeah,
Yeah.
federally, they're allowing more clinical analysis of it. So there's more research being done on it. And
Uh-huh.
now we're seeing more and more facilities open up where you can
Yeah.
go on psychedelic journeys already,
Uh-huh.
even prior to those changes happening. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, there's definitely like a psychedelic renaissance happening right now, and we're very near to that time period. So I'd like to ask you, so what are your thoughts on the future of microdosing or psychedelics in general, and do you see it becoming mainstream and used in therapeutic contexts?
I'm a big believer that everyone should be microdosing cannabinoids, all cannabinoids, full spectrum, and the mushrooms as well. And the reason behind that, I will go first with the cannabis. Cannabis used to be a wild weed in nature. Animals would graze on it, and we would get our secondary cannabinoids either through their milk, their meat products, their eggs, and even other plants interact with other plants. So we would get cannabinoids from other plants that we would eat, like leafy greens, when weed was a wild weed. Now that we've taken weed away, it's almost 100 years now, we've seen a lot more gut issues prevailing, such as
Mm,
IBS and Crohn's and stomach cancers. And our gut is where our emotions come from.
yep.
The serotonin and dopamine chemical compounds are generated in our gut. So if our guts are unhealthy, then the rest of our bodies are going to start feeling that too. And with that inflammation in our gut, it tends to bring on more stress. And if the stress is not tended to, it turns into tension. And that tension will turn possibly into a condition or a serious debilitating disease that's a lot harder to reverse than it is to prevent.
Mm,
So by saying that, microdosing mushrooms is also a great way to prevent any of your stressors to turn into a serious mental health condition. Because I want to remind everyone, it doesn't matter if you're not genetically disposed to having a mental health condition from your genealogy. Stress and a traumatic event that's super tragic or just impactful, shocking to you could trigger some kind of mental health impact for you too. You just never know.
yeah. So yeah, so what are your thoughts on the future of psychedelics, and do you see it becoming mainstream and used in therapy in the future?
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen already a high rising uptick of interest in cannabis, and it's turning into the psilocybin movement now too. And what's really interesting now, I've been taking on a program where I am going to senior centers to provide education on microdosing of all the alternative medicines. And I'm really excited to be able to bring this because honestly, this is like our greatest population. They are also the biggest voter outcome. And personally, I'm excited because they also have more free time on their hands. So I'm going to be able to utilize some more volunteers to make movements happen because we need people to take action to make the changes that we need federally and worldwide.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, like I think that's an awesome concept, because some of these senior centers can be kind of dry and kind of boring and kind of sad, and some of them are lonely. And like you said, they have all this extra time. And I think, I think it would be cool for them to kind of like have a psychedelic experience, before they leave this realm, like kind of help them accept, death. It's a natural part of life, and that'd be awesome. Yeah.
I'm happy that you just brought that up. So psychedelics like mushrooms are great for those that are in fear of dying. So cancer patients or those elderly that are just anxious and worried about it. And
Hmm.
when you utilize mushrooms, there can come to a point where you feel like you're actually dying on the mushrooms. And the best advice that I can tell you if that ever happens to you is to fall into the death, because that is where the letting go and the healing comes through. And that's been said numerous and numerous and numerous times. So that is going to be a great way for seniors to be able to kind of overcome that fear that they may have.
Yeah.
And my research, I've actually found out the CDC reported that 333% of seniors are turning to alternative medicines rather than prescription drugs.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. I didn't know that. Okay. So, what advice would you give to someone who is considering starting a microdosing practice but may have concerns?
Practice as in utilizing it themselves.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So you can follow me at the Microdose Mentor. I provide a lot of free resources there for you to be able to download a guide for you to keep track of your dosing and, just basic behind the scenes of how to utilize it, where to get it, all that stuff. And really it comes down to basically the go low and slow and keep track of every detail from your dosing to the strain to your feelings, the setting, as you go on these journeys, because each one of them is going to impact you in a different way. And integration can happen moments after, it can last for weeks, months, even years after. Don't rush the process.
Hmm.
Trust the process.
Well said. So that's a perfect segue. You touched on it for a little bit there. Can you talk a little bit more about your specific coaching services, how they work, who they're for, and any other services that you might offer as well?
Yeah, so I always offer Sanctuary as a free service because not everyone has access to having a load of money. I mean, I came from that background too. So I always want to let people know that there's a free service for you. But beyond that, I offer one-on-one coaching with psilocybin mushrooms, and that means that I help you prime your subconscious so that we can best guarantee that you'll have a good outcome, but it's not always a guarantee. Sometimes there's challenges, so that's why I'm there for you. If those challenges come up, that, I give you the support, the comfort, and the care to get through them. And those one-on-one coaching microdosing event or macrodosing events, sorry, those can be up to 2 people. So you can have a couple that joins in on that.
Mm.
Now, beyond that, I also have wellness weekend retreats where I reserve a retreat for the weekend for you to embark on a mild dose, so up to 3 grams. That's because there is a few people there. It's up to 15 people. I just want everyone to be, provided a safe environment if in case something challenging comes
Hmm.
up. We have enough rooms for private, sessions if they are necessary. But for the most part, we just want to have a mild dose. And then I also have 10 people groups where we go on those macro doses too. So I just want to meet people at different, income levels so that they can meet and be able to embark on these journeys as well in case they have, some finances, because everyone's dealing with financial issues right now with the economy, I totally, understand and feel for everyone and want to meet them where they're at.
So all of your your coaching services, those are all in person, right? You don't do them over Zoom or?
Yeah, those are all in person. Yeah. Right now they're in Illinois, and we're going to be traveling with these events too.
Nice.
As fall, winter comes around, we're going to be going to different states. So I have some networks to tap into over there, but I'll be sure to be sharing it all over my social media and newsletters. So make sure to sign up so you can find out if I'll be coming to a place near you.
Nice. Okay. And so you kind of touched on it for a second there. So are there any common challenges that individuals face when incorporating microdosing into their lives? And how do you help them navigate those challenges?
Yeah, challenges can be more on the mild and macrodose level. Microdosing seems to be pretty much accepted. Like,
yeah.
I haven't had an issue with anyone, but finding the support with your family, your friends, that's where there could be a challenge. There could be a disconnect. And you may find that, you're trying to explain yourself, because a lot of that is the integration, talking to other people and trying to make those connections. And if they're, turned off by it, you're going to feel disheartened by that. So that's the only thing I can think of right now.
Okay. And so, yeah. And so you touched on it for a second there as well. So your wellness retreat, so that's the end of this month, right?
Yeah, June 23rd and 24th. That's this month's wellness weekend retreat.
Yeah.
And wellness weekend retreats will be happening on every other month too, at the end of the month.
And can you talk a little bit about all the activities? I saw the itinerary. It's pretty impressive. Can you talk about all the activities that are available in these retreats?
Yes. There's meditation and visualization guidance. Also, there's a guided nature walk tour where you'll be instructed to visually look for specific things with one of our guides. We have 4 or 5 expert facilitators that will be on site to provide everyone a comfort zone. And then there's light foods and appetizers and drinks. There's a DJ, sound bowl meditations. There's arts and crafts because colors are awesome. There's a sauna and a jacuzzi.
Nice.
4 or 5 fireplaces. It's a 5-acre piece of land that we get to explore. So it's pretty awesome.
That's amazing. Yeah. To really help give people that community that they're looking for and help them heal, So I guess kind of closing it out, what is your vision for the future of your work? And can you send the listeners a final message of love and healing?
Yeah. The future vision is this to be accepted everywhere around the world. And I want weed to be a wild weed again, just to provide our regeneration in our soil, water, and air, as well as our health. And same with mushrooms. We should be able to freely have them growing indoors or outdoors because we're allowed to have our own free will. And I think this is my light and love message intertangled with this too. Post-pandemic, we've seen a lot of mental health issues come up. Now there's a mental health pandemic. And some of us are showing it, but we don't know what the long-term effects of this pandemic is going to take on. My PTSD didn't start at 8 years old. It set in after my 20s. So that was over 10 years of time where I thought I was fine. And then all of a sudden it took a toll on me where I became so depressed and so isolated and socially anxious. I couldn't speak to anyone. But because of the plant health medicine, I was able to build up my confidence, open myself up, and not feel ashamed. So that is my message, is find the courage to be able to speak about what's going on in your life. These shadows need to be brought to light because the longer you keep them in your shadows, they're going to become bigger shadows. Do not be ashamed. Do not feel like you're a burden or you're bringing someone else down. Find the right people in your network. And if you don't have the right people in your network, connect with me and I will connect you with some more good, better people there for you.
That's beautiful. I want to thank you, Margo. I want to thank you for your time. I can tell that you're just a very comforting soul, and I can feel it that you're providing a lot of love and guidance and healing and support to everyone that you're working with. So I want to thank you for the work that you're doing. I want to thank the listeners for sticking around to the end. So once again, Margo, please tell everyone where to find you, and I'll also add it to the description of the video.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tunes for the Crypt, for having me. This is a great conversation. And you can find me anywhere on any social media channel, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, as the Microdose Mentor.
Awesome. Thank you so much.